Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of an over-the-board game that I played this week. And I thought it was an interesting game, thought I would bring it to you. This game is the fourth in my series of over-the-board chess postmortems, and so I have a playlist called Over-the-Board Chess, and if you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out some of the other over-the-board games. The over-the-board games are interesting. You have more time to think about the moves, so you can do some deeper calculations. There's usually fewer blunders, although at my level there's still some blunders. But yeah, it tends to make for more interesting chess overall. This game was played with a time control of a game in 2 hours with a 5-second delay. So each side has 2 hours for all their moves, and you get 5 seconds of delay time on each move. So at the end of the game, if you run out of time, you still can sort of pound out the moves. And we used up quite a bit of the time. Maybe 3 of the 4 hours got used up in this game. So we didn't completely run out of time, but we took it most of the way there. So our ratings in this game, I was in this tournament. I'm rated at 1849, and my opponent is rated at 1649. So I have the I'm favorited. I'm the favorite to win this game, but my opponent has the white pieces, and a 200-point rating gap. I think it's still maybe about 3-to-1 odds in my favor, but white still has significant winning chances, just purely based on the ratings. And in any case, you have to take each game as it goes. You can't really rely on ratings to win the game for you. You have to play the game. Okay, so my opponent kicked off with e4. I play c5 with a Sicilian defense. And then he plays c3, which is the Alapin Sicilian, or the c3 Sicilian. This has the idea of supporting the move d4, so that when black plays the typical Sicilian move of c takes d, he can take back with the c pawn and maintain a strong center. But this comes with a drawback. These two pawns block the natural progression of this knight into the game, and they also leave this pawn undefended. And so the normal response here, let's take a look at this. I have the opening book on the side, but I'm leaving it off because I want you to have the experience of playing the over-the-board game as I play it, without the help of an opening book or a chess engine. It gives you a more realistic feel of what's going on. There are two moves that are the main moves here to challenge this setup, and both of them go after the weakness on e4 there. And one of them is the move d5, just directly challenging that pawn. And typical line might be pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn. And it's safe to come out with the queen because, again, these squares where the knight might come out and harass the queen are taken up by, and particularly the pawn on c3 blocks the knight to c3 move that would attack the queen. But the line I learned was the other line, which is knight f6, just attacking that pawn. And this is a useful line to learn because you can also employ it against the Smith-Morra gambit. This is a way of declining the Smith-Morra gambit when you can play this knight f6 move in the Smith-Morra. So it's sort of a dual-purpose opening. Once you've learned this, you have a couple of openings you can play it against. Okay, so e5 here is the normal move. That pawn was under attack, and white doesn't want to play a passive move like d3 defending it. And then the move I played here was knight d5, pretty much the only move here. And then, so far this is pretty much a mainline Alapin. My opponent here plays the unusual move g3, and now we are in kind of a sideline of the Alapin. It's still in the opening book, so this has been played before, and my opponent told me after the game that he had studied this opening, so he was playing this on purpose. He wasn't improvising. I've never seen it before, so I'm improvising at this point. And the move I played actually turns out to be the main move. I mean, it seems like you still want to just challenge this pawn on e5. What is it doing there? And you can play the move d6. It opens up a line for your light-squared bishop. The move e6 might be tempting because you want to support that knight against the move bishop to g2, attacking the knight. But at the same time, you're creating holes in your position on the squares d6. and f6. So it's probably not so good. And so moving the pawn to d6 is actually the main move there, and takes. And then here, the main move in the opening book is this funny move, e6. I did not even think about that during the game, but that's interesting. You move the pawn up to e6, and the bishop can then grab the pawn on d6, which just can't be defended. So it's not a pawn sack. You're just delaying the recapture to take it back under more favorable circumstances. In the game, I was trying to decide between pawn takes and queen takes, and I just decided queen takes was a little more active. And so at this point, we're out of the opening book. And it's interesting that the chess engine actually prefers black here. It's not completely obvious to me why black is better, but I think maybe because of these pawns, they're sort of impeding the progress of the knight. And white has kind of a slow plan of playing d5 and building up in the center, but he's got to complete some development over here first. And you know, I have, if you look at it, already got 2 pieces developed. My only issue is how do I get the black bishop out of the way so I can, the dark squared bishop out of the way so I can castle. And that'll take a couple of moves. I'll have to do a pawn move, and I'll have to move the bishop, and then I can castle. So this is a fine position for black, probably close to even, I would say. You know, the chess engine gives a slight edge to black, but nothing to write home about. So my opponent continues. He plays knight e2. His idea is to leave this diagonal open for the bishop, and I just continue development. Knight c6. He plays bishop g2, and so far so good. This seems to be pretty standard type of position from this opening. Black's edge now. I guess the chess engine didn't like this knight ge2 move. The edge for black is increased to 3/10 of a pawn, so the computer already thinks black is significantly better here. And I play the move which the chess engine approves of, e5. So, you know, this is a point to think. It's a choice. You know, you might want to play a more timid move like e6, defending the knight, but that blocks in this bishop. And you know, it seems like white has not yet made any claim on the center, so why not throw your own pawn into the center and try and clamp down on the move d5. It turns out you can't stop d5. It's well enough supported with the pawn on c3, the knight on e2, and the queen. There's no way to really stop d5 from being played, but it'll result in just opening up an even position. Actually, it'll favor the side that has more development when it opens up, and I'm slightly better developed still. So this position probably is good for black. I guess I agree with the chess engine assessment here. My opponent continues development with knight a3. I mean, that's one of the problems, is where is this knight going? So it's the only square he can go to. And I continue development with bishop f5. And now there's a really interesting tactic that white has here that I totally did not see during the game. So if you want to take a look at this and see what kind of tactic would you play as white here. Okay, you can pause the video if you want some time to think about it. It's kind of interesting. I'll go ahead and play the tactic now. It's kind of a two-mover. It starts first with knight b5, kicking the queen. And the queen just drops back to d7. I need to still defend my knight, and I put it on this diagonal here. Maybe I can attack that knight, which is a bit loose. And then it continues with, can you guess it? Bishop takes d5. And so this caught me totally by surprise during the game. So here I am in a 2-minute game playing a lower rated player, and he's won a piece. Or has he won a piece? So first of all, if I were to take, that would of course be a horrible blunder because of the move knight c7 check. And he's got the famous family fork here. Okay, so I can't take my knight back. So here's where you want to put on your thinking cap here. White's played this tactic. You're down a piece, and what's your best move here? And are you really down a piece? That's the question. In fact, you should think about this long enough to answer the question, who is actually better in this position? Okay, so there's pretty much only one move for black, and that saves the game. And you should really search this position until you find that move. And after you find it, then you should imagine in your head what that position looks like and try and assess it, whether it's better for white or black. Okay, so I'm going to give away the answer of what the best move is here. So if you want to think about it some more, pause the video. But the answer is A6. There's a very logical move, which is the reason I can't take the bishop is because of the knight fork. So if I chase the knight away, then I can't take the bishop. So this actually gets my piece back. There's no way for for white to save both the knight and the bishop. He can choose to save one or the other. And there's different ways white can play it here. The move that white played was actually queen a4, taking advantage of the pinning my pawn, taking advantage of my unprotected rook here on a8. So I can't take the knight right away. But I can just play, and I did play, rook c8. And once again, he's in this dilemma where he's going to lose one of those pieces. So if we back up, there are other things he could try here. So you have to think about all of these possibilities. Bishop takes here is one. This is a common theme. You've got a piece that's under attack, and then retreat the knight somewhere. Well, the only square the knight can go back to is a3. And you've won a pawn. So white is a pawn up in this point. But actually the computer strongly favors black in this position. It gives black a 2-point edge. So why is this so good for black? Well, this knight has no moves. It can only go back. Black has all his pieces developed. He has center control, and there's no huge tactic here that wins. The computer says, well, you just keep on developing normally. You play moves like bishop d3. I'm sorry, I played bishop e6. Bishop d6, rather. Bishop d3. Clamping down on these pawns here, preventing them from advancing. Let's see, the line might go b3 and queen f3. So I mean, these are not rocket science type moves. Black is just gradually increasing his grip on the position, and even though he's a pawn down, I mean, he's going to I played queen f6. I keep mixing up my 6s and my 3s. He's attacking the rook here, so the rook has to go to f1. I guess it could also try g1. And then b5, harassing the knight. Black just has a tremendous grip on the position. These holes that white has created in his structure here have been occupied by my pieces, and so again, this is like a -2 advantage for black, even in a position where he's a pawn down. So that's pretty strong. So queen a4 is actually one of the best tries, rather than trying to grab a pawn and just getting into worse difficulties with development. And so rook c8 was the move I played. And now he has to decide. The chess engine recommends just retreating the bishop to c4 here. And this is probably okay for white. Bishop c4. And I can grab the knight now, and he can grab a pawn. And even though white is a pawn up, the computer again favors black in this position. And here, just continuing development, and play might continue like this: d3, castles, castles. And bishop h3. Really, bishop h3. Right here. So again, these holes in the light squares are something that black can take advantage of, and even though he's a pawn down, the computer gives a slight edge to black in this position. So that would be with best play from white. So going back to the original question of who is better after this tactic, the answer is black is better. So if you're in this position and you notice this tactic is coming, you can just let your opponent play this tactic. And on the other hand, if you're white and you see this tactic, you have to think to yourself, is this really a good tactic? So knight b5, queen d7, bishop takes. I mean, it sure looks on the surface like a good tactic. You have to see that a6 is a good response. And even as it goes like this, that black is slightly better. The best you can do is win a pawn here, and the cost of winning that pawn is that black gets advantagement in development, and you have all these weak light squares that you've left behind. So it's pretty interesting. The tactic that at first appeared to be winning is suddenly actually giving the advantage to the opponent. Okay, so I mentioned here, I think bishop to c4 is the best try for white. What my opponent played was bishop takes c6, trying to get out of it this way. And now I can take back with the queen. I'm still a piece down, but the knight is pinned and can't really be defended. He played knight to c7 check, and I took, and then he took the queens off. And all these are best moves, according to the chess engine. So that was all correctly played. And now, very quickly, we've gone from a opening to a short tactical sequence that you might consider the middle game, and now we're in the end game. So this is a position where you have to like black in this position. There's two advantages that black has. Black has the bishop pair, and that's worth maybe half a point, and he has better control of the center. But white can fight back, and he does so immediately. He plays the move d4. And this sets up an interesting choice right away. First of all, you have to notice if you take and he takes and you take, then he takes back with a knight, and the knight here will be forking these two pieces after those exchanges. So you don't want to allow that to happen. Even if the rook can move to defend the bishop, so the fork would just allow him to trade his knight for the bishop. But at that point, the game would be pretty much dead even. So you've basically given away all your advantage if you allow that exchange and fork to happen, and you'd be left with a very even position, a symmetrical pawn structure, identical pieces, same colored bishops, and your advantagement in development is really minuscule. You have one rook that's out, but black can castle and get his rook out very quickly. So pretty much an even game at that point. So you don't want that to happen. You want to try and keep the advantage. So you first have to assess the position correctly that you do have an advantage, and then you have to figure out how to maintain it. And what I thought was I could start by taking once. I don't have to take twice, and then open up this C file and get in the move rook c2. And the chess engine likes that plan, so let's go with that. And then I got to this point and I said, but if I play rook c2, then he can play king d1. And where am I going from there? I mean, originally I was thinking, okay, rook to c2 attacks the knight, and it also threatens bishop to b4 check. And because my bishop and rook are both concentrating in this square, I maybe can win something here on the d2 square. But then I saw that he can just play his king over to d1. He doesn't have to block with the bishop, and he doesn't have to move the knight out of the way. And if he moved his king to f1, then I could play my bishop here and pin the knight, And if he moved his king to d1, I was planning to move my bishop here to pin the knight this way. But then I saw with horror that with the rook on c2 and the king on d1, he could just take my rook. So I ended up not playing rook c2, and in this position I started searching around for a different move. Now the funny thing about this is, looking at it later with the chess engine, the preferred move of the chess engine is rook c2 here. So my original idea, the chess engine likes. So he plays king d1, and I could just follow up. I don't have to move anything. I could follow up with bishop to d6 or bishop to e7, just continuing my development. And I guess what I've done is I've provoked a weakness here. He hasn't castled now, and he won't be able to castle, and he's a bit tied down. This knight can't move right away because of the f-pawn. So I think this is just a way to continue my development. Get my pieces out, castle, get the other rook, and just continue to celebrate my development advantage. And I wonder here, what happens if he takes the pawn? You know, aren't I just giving up a pawn? And the chess engine is completely unimpressed, it says. Castle. And now it's recommending knight c3. Knight c3 just gives a pawn back. What else could he try? I guess that's the thing that's hard to see when you're evaluating a position in a game is these positions where your opponent, you know, he seems to be holding everything together, but he really has no good moves here. He could shuffle his rook. Let's say he just shuffles his rook. What's my threat? Rook to d8 check. Yeah, I'm bringing my rook into the game. So that's the danger. You get all your pieces active and your opponent has no good moves. Then you eventually will win the game just by normal development. Okay, it's a little bit hard. I had to see that in this position, and I didn't see that all the way through. But in retrospect, rook c2 is the best move, and it has a certain logic. It also ties down the bishop on c1 to defend the b2 pawn. So yeah, it has a number of virtues, but they're kind of subtle. They're not tactical virtues. It's just tying your opponent's pieces up in knots, and then continuing with your development. And eventually, you get some tactical win. But that's too far ahead to see. Okay, so I was looking for something different, and I played the move bishop e4, and I forgot he could just castle here. So I was thinking, oh, my bishop is attacking his rook, and he's going to have to move it. But if he just castles, then he's in good shape. I mean, he's not winning or anything, but he's out of difficulty, and now this is only slightly favorable to white. So bishop e4 was a mistake, and it was a mistake made after a long think, whereas I was trying to figure out whether to play rook c2 or not, or what else I could play instead. If I wasn't going to play rook c2, I could play a move like f6, just supporting this pawn. So if he takes, I take back, and it helps keep this rook or this knight confined. So that would have been a good move. Kept some unnoticeable advantage. So bishop e4 was a mistake, and I was just lucky my opponent didn't think about castling here. And it's a common thing to forget that you can castle when your rook is under attack, because of course if any of these other squares were under attack you couldn't castle, but here you can. My opponent instead played rook g1. So the game continued like this: rook g1, and then I took this pawn, and he takes, and I play the move rook to c4. This is another funny moment. I was originally planning to play before exchanging, I was planning to play rook to d6 here, attacking the knight this way, and then I was going to play bishop to b4 check, forgetting about the fact that the rook on d6 blocks my bishop. So I had to improvise here and play rook to c4, attacking the rook from the side. Still, I want to allow this bishop to b4 check at some point. That's going to be a good move for me. He plays bishop e3, and now, so I have, through a couple of imprecise moves there, I have given away that significant advantage I had at one point, and now it's just kind of a slight edge for black. It's 3/10 of a pawn by the chess engine. And bishop to b4 check is not the most precise move. That's what I played here. It says bishop c5 is better. Do I understand? Yeah, I considered bishop to c5, and I just did not see what that would accomplish. I mean, he can retreat the knight. I guess I could double his pawn here, but I get rid of my bishop pair. So if he went, for example, knight b3, he could also just play rook d1, supporting the knight. Or he could play knight b3 and let me take the bishop and just live with the isolated pawn for a while. So, okay, anyway, I decided to play bishop b4 check, and he went king e2. Pretty much the only move. He can't block with the bishop because I grabbed the knight. And then I castle, and I'm thinking, well, at least I'm getting my pieces out. But there's still just a slight edge for black, not a whole lot. And he immediately goes to exchange off the rooks. And, I maintain that slight edge through that sequence. And we get into even more of an endgame. We're down to just the minor pieces. And there's a symmetrical pawn structure. I have the bishop pair, and that's really my only advantage, so it's a pretty slight edge. And I start out by playing f6. I want to make a path for my king to get into the game. I think getting your king active is really important in the endgame. He attacks my bishop with a3. And I play bishop back to d6. I want to keep my bishops centralized, try and control as much of the board as possible with them. Try and keep this knight from finding good squares. The knight, at some point I want to chase it away because the knight is blocking the progress of the king. So I'm thinking of rerouting my bishop to here or to here at some point. But for now I'm just sitting back and putting it in a good spot. He plays bishop d2. I go king f7, starting my crawl towards the center. He goes bishop to e3. So he's maybe wasting a bit of time with his bishop moves, but I don't see that he has an active plan. One thing that's sort of an important feature of the position is that all of these pawns are on the same color as his bishop. So it makes it easy for him to defend them, but at the same time they can get in the way of his bishop. So overall they're a liability. And if I were able to trade my light-squared bishop for his knight, let's get rid of those colors. Okay, if I were to trade my light-squared bishop for his knight, we'd have bishops of the same color, and if I put all my pawns on light squares and all his pawns are on dark squares, I would have an advantage because I would have targets all over his position and he would not be able to attack my pawns with his bishop. So that's a long-term consideration here. And I was thinking about that with g6. Puts another pawn on a light square and also takes this square away from the bishop if my from the knight. Takes this square away from the knight if my bishop were to move away. The knight still couldn't come into my camp there. So he plays king d2. He's sort of marking time here in a way, and I go king e7. I'm still trying to figure out how to get my king into the game. He goes king c3, so he's got a plan of advancing on the queen side, and I want to stop that. I play bishop to d5, blocking out his king. And now you can see one of the advantages of the two bishops is how they can cover all the squares of the board, and particularly when they're centralized like this. You see there's no way, or it's going to be difficult for the black king to break into my position because the bishops can effectively keep him out. Of course, white's knight there is pretty good as well, keeping my king out of the game. So we'll see how it goes. I play b4. No, he plays b4. I play b5. And that takes away two more squares from his king, so he can't break through at all on this side. So his king is somewhat out of play over there. And then he plays knight b3. And now here is the situation I was referring to. I can now trade my bishop for his knight and get this pure endgame where we just have dark squared bishops and all my pawns are on light squares and he has targets on the dark squares. And I decide to do that. The chess engine is a bit skeptical. No. After thinking, it gives bishop takes b3 as the best move. So it was preferring to move bishop e5 at first, bishop e5 check. But after it thought about it, it realized this is the best move. And now this is probably still a drawn a drawn endgame with best play. But I have a lot of advantages. I think here, yeah, he probably should have played something other than moving the knight. It lets my king into the game, and it lets me execute this trade. Although the chess engine is suggesting knight b3 is one of the moves, so maybe it's just hard as top choice even. F4 is another idea the chess engine has here. So maybe it's just getting hard for white to find moves. But he allows this trade, and now my king can come forward because the knight is no longer keeping me out of these squares. But I think he plays a4 here, and I can ignore that because a trade here will just, I'll still have a pawn on the light square and his king will still be kept out. My main idea is to get my king to the center as quickly as possible to keep his king from breaking through on any of these squares. So in particular, I mean the dark squares I can cover with my bishop, but it's this square I have to guard with my king to prevent his king from getting into my camp. So he exchanges, and then he plays king c3. Yeah, so he's trying to get back towards the center here, and I play king e4. And my edge has increased a little bit. Yeah, the chess engine is now starting to like my position more. So maybe in this position, a more accurate move, better, stronger defense is f3. Just try and keep me out. So he should apply the same strategy to my king that I'm applying to his king. He's controlling all of these squares with his bishop and his pawns, and his king is here protecting the b pawn, and it's tied down to the b pawn because my bishop is attacking it. But if he can use his other pieces to keep me out. Still, I would have ideas here. I could bring my pawns forward and try and attack. And actually, even after f3, as the chess engine chews on it longer, it starts to give more of an advantage to black. So it's just a position where black can play on with very little chance of losing, and with a slight edge and a slight pull. And you see a lot of games at the top level. I think Magnus Carlsen is famous for playing like this. He plays on in games that ought to be drawn, but he has some slight edge, something to play for, and he wins a lot of those games. So it's a percentage game. So my opponent played king c3 here, and I went king to e4. And then he went bishop c5. And here is another point where you need to really stop and think. This offers a trade of bishops and a direct transition to a purely pawn endgame. And whenever you get offered something like that, you really need to stop and consider it as best you can. Because a pawn endgame, a lot of times you can calculate them all the way out to the end. So if you have a winning pawn endgame and you have a chance to go into it, you really should do that. They're the simplest ways to win when you can calculate it all the way out to the end. But this one is not quite as simple as you might think. So first of all, let's just talk about it without moving any of the pieces. If I take his bishop, he takes back with a pawn. I attack his pawn with my king. He defends the pawn and attacks my pawn, and then I move my king to the square c6, which is still attacking his pawn and defending my pawn. And he's got his king on the square b4, and he's defending his pawn and attacking my pawn. So whoever moves, and it's his turn to move, whoever moves loses in this scenario, because there's no square you can go to that defends your pawn, and the other guy will just win. So let's put that on the board. So this position is similar to the trebuchet position, which I talked about in one of my Chess Basics series. Look at the series I did on pawn endgames. And the trebuchet is famous because it's such a double-edged position. It's a trebuchet is French for catapult, and the idea is you're throwing the other guy off the catapult. So if there weren't any pawns over here on the king side, then it would be white's turn to move, and he can't go to these squares because they're covered by my pawn. And anywhere else he goes, any of these squares, these are his only other moves, allow me to, say he goes back here, it's probably the most stubborn defense, allows me to just win a pawn. And this would, well, actually I don't know if this is winning or not. In the trebuchet, the king position is slightly different, and you get your pawn in front of your opponent's king. So it's similar to a trebuchet, but the main point is if he moved his king and there were still pawns over here, I threw those pawns away and now I'm bringing them back. This is a winning endgame for black because you just run this pawn up, get his king to the back, and then your king runs over here and gobbles up these pawns. Easy win. So backing up to this position, you can see ahead that far and you think, oh, maybe I have a winning chance. But it turns out it's not a winning chance, it's rather a losing chance. So it all depends. You have to be able to count the moves of what's happening over here on the queen side. So here, sorry, let's play through this again. Bishop takes. And now it's his move, and he can win. I thought, he might win by playing moves that just mimic my pawn structure and try and run me out of moves. But this is not a winning try. I'll show you. F5, F4, H6, and if he plays H3, just trying to mimic every move, then I have the breakthrough move G5. And now there's an exchange. Push, push, and both sides are going to... Oh, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You have to push. That's the key. If we back up for a second, let's explain why this is a mistake. If he takes, back up. If he takes and I take, I queen first. And win his queen. Okay? So that's not the way to play it. The way to play it is push this pawn. I take. Both sides queen. And this position, okay, maybe it's slightly favorable to black because black has an extra pawn and he gets the first move. But it's not at all clear who's going to win that. The evaluation was in favor of black. So that doesn't work, but what white can play here, which wins for white, is F4. And now, no matter what I do, I end up losing. So suppose I try the scenario where I just try to run him out of moves by mimicking his every move, which is what I would have tried. That was the plan I had. Sorry, H6. Just trying to mimic it and see if he runs out of moves. Now, if he goes like this, then he has to move and I'm winning, right? But he doesn't play that. He plays here again. And it's another breakthrough idea. So what can I play? The chess engine is recommending H5. Let's try exchanging first. What happens here? This takes back. Try to run for the hills here. He takes. I take. And he's going to queen first and win. So it just has to do with the position of the queens. I'll get a queen, but white has the first move. And there's actually a mate in 8 here, according to the chess engine. So that's winning for white. Okay, so that was after G4. The other try, which is recommended by the computer, is H5. And he can take either way. Let's take the H pawn. I guess it doesn't matter. And play here. And now he's run me out of moves, and I have to step back. And he wins by taking my pawn and then coming over and gobbling up my other pawns. So if we back up to the game position, let's just go there directly. after here, I might consider bishop takes bishop, and I had to calculate this during the game. I took quite a bit of time here, and I wasn't sure, but I didn't think I was winning. And in fact, with chess engine analysis, it appears I would even lose if I were to go that route. So bishop e5 check is what I played, and just trying to maintain my advantages and push his king to a worse square. He went to d2, and now I march in with my king to f3, and I've got a winning advantage. So after his move bishop c4, and I play this move bishop e5 check, actually this was the final blunder of the game, as it were. So if we back up to here, did he have other choices besides bishop c5? No, the chess engine is already rating this as strongly in favor of black. Okay, so bishop c5 was not the best move, but it wasn't the losing move. The losing move was when he moved his king instead of playing f6, I guess. But even that was difficult. Okay, so check. This is how the game went. And king d2 and king f3. I just clamped down on his pawns, and we got that ideal scenario where I'm attacking his pawns, which are all in the same color as the bishops, and he can't attack my pawns. So I'm about to go in here to g2 and gobble up the h-pawn, so he plays h4, and I just stop it from moving forward with h5. He goes king d3. He's sort of running out of ideas here, and king e1 was a more stubborn defense, though. He needs to try and hold on to this pawn, but should still be winning. Okay, I play g5 now. So now I have the breakthrough idea over here. I want to isolate these pawns, create another weakness over here so I can gobble them up. He decides to exchange, which is as good as anything. And then I play the move bishop to, it's his move. Yeah, white plays the move bishop e7, attacking my pawn. But when he attacks my pawn, I can take his pawn. And now I have a choice of which pawn to take, either this one or this one. And it's about the same. I decided that the chess engine rates them equally. I decided to go after this pawn, thinking it's more useful to have a passed b pawn than a passed h pawn, which these rook pawns are sometimes difficult to promote. So he went bishop f4, and I took. And now he went to king c2, getting his king in position to stop this pawn, and I play king f3, and now this is just easily losing. There's just no way for him to defend everything. I'm going to just put my bishop over here, attack his pawn, and it's an important thing to note here that after my bishop takes the pawn, that all of these squares are guarded by the bishop and the pawn, so his king can't come in and attack these guys. He's got to go around to c2 like he did, just get in front of them. So king f3, just getting my position, king out of the way so I can play bishop to e1 here. He played bishop e5, I go bishop e1, and he went g4. He can't defend the pawn anyway, so he gave it up this way. Doesn't much matter. Just play through the rest of the moves here, I think. So king b3, trying to stop this. Notice my bishop here is once again keeping his king from getting in close to the pawn, and he can't ever come around behind it to win it because then it starts running forward. So I just have to trade this pawn off for that bishop, and then this pawn will win. I'll have a bishop and a pawn, and it's not a rook pawn, so that will be winning. So I just push forward. He wastes some time, and eventually we force the trade, and then he sits in front of the pawn and plays out the game to the end. I'll just step through the rest of the moves. But I guess there is one point I wanted to say here. This is obviously he's playing on. He knows he's lost, but he's hoping for a stalemate of some kind. So you always have to be sure on each move that he's got two squares to go to at least. At least one other square to move to. The square he's on. So two squares counting the square he's on. So he's got these two. He can also come out to this one. And he decides to try and escape. You want to keep him in the box. So bishop move there, and he has to go back. and then king there. So now he's limited to these two squares. And you check with the bishop, force him to this one square, but whenever he moves with check, then you're okay. And now he couldn't go in front of the pawn, he has to go behind it. And now this is an easy win. And so he resigned here. His only move is to go there, and then that's checkmate. One of several checkmates. So anyway, I thought that was a pretty instructive and interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Leave any comments you have in the section below. And as I said, if you like these long games, these analyses of postmortems of long games, check out the series, the playlist called Over the Board Chess. Okay, see you guys later. Bye.